Hello and welcome to episode 9 of this series. In this episode, we are going to talk about slots. We're going to, get familiar with the concept and the idea of the slots, and we are going to see an example of using slots in our application. So slots are used for content projection and flexible layout, and we can combine slots with custom events, and we can, make the application flexible. Before we talk about slots, let's talk about custom events a little bit. We have been working with custom events in our application. So for communicating from our child component to our parent component, we are using custom events. We are raising an event, for example, from the book card component, and then we are reacting to that custom event in the book list component. So using custom events, we can communicate from one component to another one. So lead components dispatch events to notify parent components about changes or actions. To dispatch custom events, we use something like this. The syntax in episode 4, I guess, we talked in detail about bubbles, about composed, about passing the detail object, which is the, let's say the detail of the book, on which we raise that, custom event. So we already know how to, create custom events, the events that bubble up through Shadow DOM and, can be reacted to by the parent component. Now we want to combine that, the concept of custom events with slots. But before, of course, we do that, let's talk about slots a little bit. So slots, as the name suggests, allow components to accept some piece of content and render that child content inside of their templates. So it kind of allows the components to be flexible, to receive some content as input and then show that content. So you can use named slots, which is something that we are going to do in this episode, to organize content areas, if you will. We've got the same idea in other technologies and platforms as well. For example, in Razor Pages, we have the same idea. Now, communication flows in parent and child components. If we want to pass some data from our parent to child, we can use properties or attributes. If we want to notify the parent of a change that has happened in the child component, we can use events. And again, if we want to pass some content from the parent component to the child component, we can use slots. And then the child component is going to render that content. So what we are going to do for this episode is that we are going to create this book details component with some slots. The slots can receive some value from the parent component. So the book details is going to be a very simple component. The only different thing right now is that we are creating 4 named slots using the syntax. So slot and then a name for each slot. And of course, we are adding styles for these slots. For example, if there is a slot for H2, add this, color. For another slot with the P element, add this, style. So we've got, a slot here, another one here. These are named slots. They've got names. And the parent component can pass some value for these content placeholders or content areas using these names that we have defined here. So what is a slot again? So a slot is a placeholder, is a kind of, a content area in your web components template where the parent component can inject or insert some content. So for example, your, child component can say, hey, you can pass content into me and I'll display it here. And right now in our book details component, we have 4 named slots. So the book details component has 4 named slots. As you can see, they have names. It means that the parent component can now inject or insert some external content to these named slots, and the book details component can render those pieces of content. What is a named slot? As you remember, we've got slots in the book details component, and all of them have some names. So each slot has a name. When you use the book details in your HTML, you can pass some content to each slot. So for example, for the slot whose name is title, I am passing an h2 element with this content. For another slot with this name, author, I'm passing a p tag, and so on. So this is an instance of using the book details component. Now, each child element has a slot, as you can see, attribute with a value, and the value is the name that the book details component has specified for that slot. So it goes to that, matching slot inside of the book details component. And as I showed you, you can add styles for those slots as well. This is, a special CSS pseudo element that lets you style the content passed into the slot. So I say that, for the H2 added to the slot, go ahead and add this color code. This means that if, an H2 is passed into the slot that I have defined, make it blue. Same for the paragraph tag. So if there is a paragraph tag, added or inserted by the parent component for the slots that I have defined in the book details component, just go ahead and add this, style, this margin. So this is, again, the visual summary. I've got this book details component. I've got 4 named slots, title, author, year, extra, and then the parent component can invoke the book details component and pass elements for these named slots. And then the book details, which is the child component in this case, is going to apply, styles to the H2 and paragraph tags, and is going to render them one by one. Inside of the, component, it's rendered, like this. Now, let me go ahead and on this, new branch that I've got here, I want to create the book details component. So I am going to import lit element HTML CSS custom element. The name of the component is book details. I'm going to add some general styles for details, CSS class, and then some slot styles for P and for H2 elements. And then I am going to render the HTML template, a div with the class details, and 4 different named slots, title, author, year, and extra. And I'm done with this, simple component. Now, why would we use slots? So as you see, slots allow a component to be flexible and customizable or configurable. So you kind of allow your parent component to pass some custom content to your child component, and the child component is going to render those pieces of content. So that again makes your child components reusable. It means that you can, invoke your child component as many times as you want, each time passing different pieces of content to those, named slots. And of course, they can be styled, right? You can define different, styles for each slot inside of your, child component. Now, the next thing that we want to do is to update the book list component and to use the book details from now on. So let me take you to the book list. So inside of the book list, based on the, event that the book card component is, creating, you remember the book card component, right? So the book card component is invoking or raising a custom event, and then we are handling that custom event in the parent component, which is the book list. And then if the, state that we've got here called selected book has a value, we are going to render this piece of content. Now, what I want to do is to get rid of this and use the book details component that I just created. And in order to show the different pieces of information about that selected book state, a local state, I mean, I am going to use the slots that the book details provides. So as you again remember, the book details allows me to pass some named slots: title, author, year, and extra. And I am using this selected book, which we defined in previous episodes, which is a local state inside of this component. This is the state selected book. Whenever I have some value inside of the selected book, I'm going to invoke the book details, and I am going to pass some values for these name slots. And the application is of course functional. By selecting each one of these books, I can get the details using the book details component. So now let's go through the explanation. Again, as I told you, in the book list component right now we're using the book details, and we've got 4 name slots, right? And we are going to pass 4 different HTML elements for each one of these name slots. For example, for the slot whose name is title, I am going to pass an H2 element with this piece of content, the title of the selected book. So this fills this content area inside of the book details with this piece of content, the H2 element. And the pattern repeats for the slot named author, which is filled with a p tag, the slot named year with a p tag, and another slot with the name extra, which is filled with a p tag again. So here we are going to conditionally show the text this is a bestseller if the selected book's bestseller is true. Otherwise we're gonna pass blank. So overall, again, when the user clicks on a book inside of the book list, we are going to set that local state, and then we are going to render the book details using the different slots inside of the book details. We are going to pass different HTML elements with the content that we want. So the recap of this episode: in this episode we kind of again discussed the importance of custom events and how custom events can help us to notify our parent components of a change in the child components. We discussed composed and bubble. Again, this is something that we also discussed in previous episodes. It kind of helps us with event propagation so that the events are passed to the parent components. We saw how we can use slots to pass content to our child components, and we kind of established a parent-child communication or relationship in our application. I'm going to wrap up this video here, and I will continue the application in the next episode.